Hello and welcome to the In the Beginning podcast. Today's conversation is fueled by Burial Grounds Coffee Company. Right now I am sipping a cup of Death Star. It is made from a Peru single origin Arabica bean and is pretty tasty. Get your order today at burialgrounds.coffee. Last week I introduced listeners to Scott Karuba's dark urban fantasy, Dance of the Butterfly. And today we will discuss reviews left about the tale along with a topic picked directly from those reviews. Forbidden and taboo topics in literature. If you haven't already read the book or heard last week's episode, you may want to take a listen. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform so that you don't miss a single story and can participate in each week's discussion. We can also be followed on your favorite social media platform under In the Beginning. As we will learn in a moment, Scott wasn't surprised by some of the reactions to the subject matter in his novel, and even discusses how certain topics evolved organically during his writing process. Sometimes, you must follow the path of the story.
Last week we introduced you to Scott Karuba's Dance of the Butterfly.
So what'd you think about the story, Marie? At least the beginning.
I liked it. I liked hearing it. It made a lot more sense to me than reading it. Reading it, it was a little bit confusing as to who was saying what and what was going on. But hearing that kind of defined.
See, I seen a couple of reviews where people talked about, like they didn't like the way it was written. I loved it. I saw nothing wrong with it. Everything came out fine to me. But other than that, I thought he wrote very well too. I mean, my mouth didn't want to say the words. I must have recorded that thing 14 times, but I thought it was very well put together, at least the beginning. I know you read the entire thing. I'm trying to stick to just the beginning so that these conversations, meet just what the other listeners hear.
Okay.
Why don't we read some reviews for this story? We had one from Patricia on Amazon. What did she have to say?
This is a very interesting book. I started reading it in the evening and struggled with it in the beginning. The first couple of chapters were a little hard to get through, so I put it down and I would start on it in the morning. When I dived back into the book, I got through the first 2 chapters. I found this book to be very interesting and really got into the storyline. The rivalry between the 2 families is very powerful, and all because of old books and lore. They have very different methods of keeping the book safe. Lydia, a young librarian that is entrusted to keep the book safe. Will she survive, and will the book be safe?
See, right there, an issue that I had with the book came right up. The names, I wasn't sure how to say certain names, and when I read a book, I just say what I want to say. Is that Lijah? Is it Lilja?
Right, yeah, when I read it.
Little Ja? I mean, I will say that some of the names, I'm sure there was a reason behind them, but they went over my head. But she brings up a point, too, that the beginning was a little hard to get through. I thought, started right out, I don't understand what the wolves had to do with anything, but I'm sure it speaks to how Jericho, the type of person Jericho is. Like I said, I only stuck to the beginning so that I'd be fresh for these conversations. Joan on Amazon says it was an engaging dark fantasy horror story with compelling characters and a mysterious jigsaw of events that will surprise you at every turn. I thought I had some of it figured out, and then, oops, nope, got it wrong again. I'm looking forward to see just where this story takes me in the second book in this series. I haven't read any of Karuba's books before, but I will definitely keep an eye out for more books by this author. How about you? Are you planning on getting his second one?
Yeah, I believe it's either just released or it's coming out soon. I know I've seen advertisement for it.
I believe it's out. Last I knew, he was working on his 3rd. So, yeah, definitely check him out. As with all reviews, they're not always good, but they're always important. For instance, there was a woman on Goodreads named Brooke. She had something to say about the story.
She says, the first several chapters of the novel suffered with some writing issues that nearly led me to give up reading it entirely. There were countless instances where the word this is used without specification as to which this the author refers, and overuse of unnecessary copular verbs like seems and appears, the point that from the reader's perspective, the events of the novel are often out of focus.
Yeah, in the beginning of the book, I didn't notice any of that. I don't know if it came over more. I'm planning on reading it this week now that we've finished the review section of the story. But definitely I didn't notice any of that in the beginning. But I also believe that everybody expects more and different things out of books. Sometimes things just go by me. I just accept everything. I love them. And then this brings us up to the topics today. We found that some of the readers were put off by some of the subject matter of the book. For instance, Patricia, she says the author takes us down some pretty dark pathways, especially with the sex trafficking aspect of the book. There's a touch of BDSM also in the book, which to me was kind of off-putting. I spoke to the author about this, and I apologize we don't have audio. Our schedules just wouldn't account for it. But here's a few questions that we spoke about on email.
Were you surprised that people stated they were put off by the BDSM aspect of your story?
And this was Scott's reply. I was not. I realize this can be an uncomfortable topic for people, but it was important to me to show it in the blossoming relationship between the two main characters, as well as showing it in a healthy light. The story deals with many potentially taboo and uncomfortable topics, and that is the point.
Do you feel that BDSM was too taboo a topic for this type of novel?
I do not. The developments between Lyja and Sko are organic, and they're exploring BDSM as a part of it. As far as this type of novel, I've seen many aspects of sex and eroticism explored in urban fantasy. I would say they fit well together.
When you are creating, do you have everything planned out, or do you go where the story takes you?
And this is Scott's answer. I use a combination of both. Though I know the bullet points ahead of time, I do quite a bit of research and outlining. And if anything, I generally have much of the story developed in my mind before I write it. What about you, Marie? Did you find any of the BDSM off-putting or out of place for this story?
No, not at all. If anything, it gave you a look into why a certain character developed the way they did, or gave you you could visually see them with that input in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It says right in the blurb that sex trafficking and dark aspects are part of the story. I mean, how do you have sex trafficking without it being disturbing or taboo? It was kind of implied. There was an Amazon reader who agreed. This person goes by the name Shebat Legion, and they had to say,
while the novel does contain adult themes, I did not find them gratuitous, but integral to the plot.
We also asked our audience about the taboo and forbidden topics. Thomas from Facebook says graphic depictions of torture will cause him to stop reading unless it's short and serves a real purpose for the narrative. And I can understand if somebody gets gratuitous or it just seems like it goes too far. I remember reading a book called Echo City, and I don't know if I couldn't get past some of the crazy aspects of the story. And without going too far into it, they were doing mutilations, and it wasn't. I'm a pretty tough guy. It was not my cup of tea. I actually had to stop reading the story. I couldn't go anymore. I just felt it was just way too much. The author was trying way too hard. How about you, Marie? Are there any forbidden topics or taboo topics that you'll just stop reading a story?
I don't think so. I mean, this week, in taking a break from reading from the authors that we're going to be showcasing, I read a book that was nothing but basically sex trafficking and what happens, and it didn't put me off. If anything, it kind of made me feel for the characters more. And even in my own writing, I've been told that the scenes that I create for war are too graphic and they need to be toned down, but things like war are graphic.
Yeah, if it's part of the story, you got to go with it. I mean, the story is going to take you wherever it's going to take you. And how about you, the listener? Are there any topics that you find taboo or forbidden? And what other topics would you like us to discuss on this podcast? Head over to acmBooks.com/indie-beginning. Let us know what you think. You're way too easy. Purchase your copy of Dance of the Butterfly on Amazon. This episode was brought to you by our friends over at Burial Grounds Coffee Company. All reviews were taken from Amazon, Goodreads, or on one of our Indie Beginning sites. Head there to read them in full. Music found in this episode was written and performed by Jake Cote. I am your host, Benjamin, asking everyone to read more books, be the best possible you, and to simply enjoy this wonderful life. Thanks for listening.